Okay, let's start here. We're finishing up chapter 5 today, and this sounds really hot or whatever, but we're finishing up chapter 5 today, guys. Starting at verse 19. Do not listen to an accusation against an elder unless it is confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses. Those who sin should be reprimanded in front of the whole church. This will serve as a strong warning to others. I solemnly command you in the presence of God and Christ Jesus and the highest angels to obey these instructions without taking sides or showing favoritism to anyone. Never be in a hurry about appointing a church leader. Do not share in the sins of others. Keep yourself pure. Don't drink only water. You ought to drink a little wine for the sake of your stomach because you are sick so often. Remember, the sins of some people are obvious, leading them to certain judgment, but there are others whose sins will not be revealed until later. In the same way, the good deeds of some people are obvious, and the good deeds done in secret will someday come to light. Okay. So, this week we have more on the front regarding elders and the leadership of the church. Last week we talked about what they mean to us and how we should view them, how we should respect them, so on and so forth. This week we get a message from Paul to Timothy about appointing them, what it looks like. It's sort of a continuation to an earlier chapter in Timothy regarding the checklist that we went over, what an elder should look like. But this week, we have some insight from Paul about how Timothy should deal with them. Remember, Paul started the church in Ephesus, and Timothy basically picked up the baton from there. He oversees what's happening in Ephesus at the time. We know from previous sermons and stuff that, and just true to form, when someone goes away or something, people forget, and then they start teaching false doctrines and whatnot. So we have previous messages from Paul about false teachers and stuff. So this is sort of the environment that's going on at the time. Paul starts out by telling Timothy not to hear anyone. Don't listen to an accusation against an elder unless it's confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses. So we have this like climate where people in leadership of the church are, they're teaching false doctrines, or they're saying one thing. So it's easy for the reputation to be tarnished at this point. It's easy for people to start nitpicking and stuff. And we see that like today too. Like, we talk a lot about being like a proper reflection and a light to the world and how important that is for us. If we aren't, then how does other people's view of Christianity and the life that's supposed to be, how is that tainted? So this is a message from Paul at the first verse here, or the 19th verse, I should say, about sort of protecting that, because there's this tense climate about these people in leadership. He quotes the Old Testament. He quotes the scripture they had at the time, Deuteronomy. Although in Deuteronomy it's a lot more harsh. But he says basically, don't allow these people, like this divisive behavior, to start corrupting the church. In Deuteronomy, it talks about. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Don't allow this divisive behavior to come up. Don't take one person's word for it. Timothy, get the facts before you correct this person. And he says, an accusation against an elder. Earlier in the chapter, we see Paul tell Timothy how to treat an older person. It uses the same word, and the words are used interchangeably throughout Paul's epistles even. But what he uses here is specifically in regards to the people in leadership. Before he's talking about, and we talked about, my first sermon of the month, how we treat older people, older men like fathers, women like mothers and stuff. So it's not a contradiction to what he said earlier in the chapter. But in fact, for the people in leadership, he says that don't take one person's word for it. Don't allow this divisive behavior to start surfacing in the church. But he says that if you do come across one of these people, that they should be publicly reprimanded to serve as a stern warning to others. Earlier in one of his business in Ephesians, he says, it says expose the evilness, allow the light to expose the evilness. And that's what he's saying here too. We see sort of in today's society, and we see sort of this behavior of like tolerance, whether that be in like conversations with people or on Facebook and stuff. But we see this really tolerant behavior, and like nothing is sacred anymore. And we talk about that often in our church, what's bad versus what's good, and how that gets muddled about and stuff. But he's saying, don't be tolerant towards these people. Stand strong. How many times on Facebook, it's a delicate dance, but we see something on Facebook from somebody, and specifically somebody who's a professed Christian, or at least has clicked their little button on Facebook that says that they're a Christian or whatever. But we see something that is anti-biblical or anti-God, and we keep scrolling because it's not worth a fight. We don't really know how to address it ourselves, or so on and so forth. And just sort of the postmodern world we live in, everything is up for debate and stuff. Paul is encouraging Timothy specifically to the leadership of the church, to not stand for that. Stand strong. And it's an important message to Timothy, because we have to remember who Timothy is. He's this young guy. He's described as timid, and there's people that are older than him and speak with authority. Timothy doesn't necessarily speak with authority, but Paul's encouraging Timothy to, stay strong. He says to reprimand these people in front of the whole church to serve as a warning. So don't accept these false teachers. Reprimand them, tell them, and show the whole body where they err. He goes on to say, I solemnly command you in the presence of God and Christ and the highest of angels to obey these instructions without taking sides or showing favoritism. Earlier in the year, so this was a few months ago, we have sort of a context of that word. I think it was Josh that preached on favoritism. Don't show favoritism. Josh explained what that meant, the difference between respectful and respectable. The difference between respectful and respectable, and allowing God to be the ultimate authority in that and who we submit to. And so Timothy here is being told by Paul to, as he's dealing with these people popping up in this divisive behavior, to not show favoritism to somebody. Don't take one person's word for it. Search for where these people are coming from. And we'll get into it more later, because it talks about allowing time to go on before he appoints leaders. But search for where these people or these leaders are coming from and what their calling is. Don't allow one person's word to like be the judge for one person or whatever. So there's this tense climate going on in Ephesus right now, false teachers and leaders teaching false doctrines and stuff. And so this is a message to Timothy about how does he handle that. Never be in a hurry about appointing a church leader. Do not share in the sins of others, and keep yourselves pure. Keep yourself pure. So Timothy, once again, Timothy is this, sort of, he's described, and Paul's messages to Timothy, not just in here, but in other letters to the church and to Timothy himself. But the implication is that Timothy is sort of he's a young up-and-coming guy, and he's timid. So stay strong, Timothy. Keep yourself pure. So once, and it's relevant for us because we go out into the world, and we are exposed to different beliefs and different people's views of things, and we're exposed to like culture and media and stuff, and things are just thrown into our face, and we're supposed to be able to process all that like that and see where it's wrong and see where something might be right, and so on and so forth. Excuse me. The message is the same to Timothy as it is for us. We go out and we navigate our lives and our environments and stuff, and we're expected to remain pure and to remain godly and Christ-like in all that we do. Sort of reminded when I read this passage, but like this specific verse. I was reading a comic like 2 weeks ago, and it's a Star Wars comic, but there's these two guards that are like, okay, let me just give you some context. It's an awesome comic, but Lando Calrissian steals the Emperor's ship, and because he's like a scoundrel and a bounty hunter and stuff, but so he steals the Emperor's ship and comes across this area of the ship, and these two like guards are guarding it. They get past the guards and find what's in there. It turns out to be like all these like Sith artifacts and gnarly things. But so fast forward to like 2 issues later, it turns out that bear with me. Fast forward to a couple issues later, it turns out that because these guards were just around this like bad entity, Sith artifacts and different things like that, they like became like Sith, like bad guys. So don't go out into your environments in your world and become Sith. That's basically what Paul is saying to Timothy, and we can take from that the same thing. Stay pure. Don't allow the Sith artifacts to change who you are and what you know and who you know God to be, and don't allow it to take place of all those things. Verse 23 is a sort of seemingly, or it sort of seems to be like a digression in the letter here. It talks about don't drink only water and what? Add a little wine to your diet. That's funny. I'm drinking water. I get it. But it's in context to staying pure. Don't become so focused on like doing right that you're doing harm to yourself. And then he says, remember the sins of some people are obvious, leading them to certain judgment. There are others whose sins won't be revealed to later. Good works, same situation. So Paul's saying to Timothy, don't be in a hurry. Don't be in a hurry when you're dealing with these leaders and you're looking to appoint them. We have here in this church alone, we have a 7-year eldership academy, and it's like an intense thing, and at the end of that 7 years, we may not even become elders because we're not fit to do that or something. But yeah, it's important that it's important that Paul stresses that that point. How many times do we see? I mean, unfortunately, we've had like people in our own body. Kevin thought that he wanted to do Eldership Academy, and that was commendable. I mean, it's an intense thing to even like step up to that plate, guys, and like even like take that first step to like want to be in that direction. Obviously, we know that that wasn't God's plan for this body, but that's why, people seem like they have good intentions at first, and then you find out that, maybe they've wavered or something, or maybe they grew out of their infatuation, and we deal with that, and that's just sort of human nature. We focus on one thing, or we are really like zealous towards one thing, or think we want something, and then the infatuation dies off. So that protects the church and the body to not be rushing into that. I think about like the leadership of, and I'm not like the most well-versed, and I'll be the first to say that, but President Obama started out saying that he was going to do one thing, or saying that he believed in one thing, 8 years later almost, and his views have changed or whatever. I keep hearing like different things about the Pope, and how the Pope has become more and more tolerant about certain things like that. This is the kind of thing that Paul is saying to Timothy. Don't allow these things to creep in to God's household. And remember, that's what we're talking about in this whole context of this month is God's household. But yeah, I think about those people, and I think about the people in our body, even that, take Obama for instance. They liked Obama at first. Turns out that Obama wasn't that awesome, or didn't do everything that he said he was going to do, or didn't believe everything he said that he believed in. So we see, in reference to the last verse here, we see it play out, good works and sins and stuff revealed now versus later, and later versus now. But we see that happening in society. Let people prove themselves, and that's why we have a system set up in our church, like with Eldership Academy, allow their calling to like really come to light, and allow them to, show that they are like after God, seeking truth and seeking to like explain that and live that. Don't be quick to put these people in charge. Don't do it because they seem infatuated. They seem like they have good intentions or whatever. But allow their calling, which is what our position is, and leadership's position is, calling from God. Allow that to come to light, and let that shine. Sort of feel like this is very short, but some questions for you guys. Have you noticed yourselves becoming tolerant towards specific things or people, or the environments you're in? Have you noticed yourselves doing that scroll down syndrome on Facebook because it's not worth the fight or whatever? And I say that's a delicate dance because it is. You're not just seeking to like pick fights all over the place where you are. Maybe like, whatever, yeah. But do you notice yourself doing that because it's too exhausting to get in an argument? Or are you willing to like, stand for God and like stand for what His Word says, and allowing that to be the authority? It's really easy to just scroll by, or in conversations even to be like aggressively passive. like to avoid topics because you don't want to get into it or whatever. How are you in that? And then do the environments you put yourselves in or people you surround yourself make it hard for you to live godly lives? You know, he says to Timothy here to stay pure because he's in that that environment of false teachings and stuff. Are the environments you guys in hard? Do they make it hard for you to live in a way that's like Christ-like and godly and stuff? Yeah, are you staying pure? Are you being tolerant? Those are the things that Paul is saying to Timothy here. Thanks.